must not, have to, don't have to, need to, needn't to, don't need to. The lesson of today is about these expressions or words. So, task 1, write what each sentence expresses. Is it prohibition, obligation, absence of obligation, or necessity, giving a permission, or an advice? First sentence, you must arrive on time to the meeting. The second, you have to work hard to succeed. So prohibition is if you do something, you will be punished. Obligation, if you don't do something, you will be punished. And it means you have a choice. Either you do it or you don't do it. It's your choice. Necessity, either you do it or you will have bad consequences on yourself. Giving a permission to allow someone to do something. An advice, just to give it to someone. He does it or he doesn't do it. It's his choice. You need to eat because you have medicines to take. You have to drink water, for example. You must not or you mustn't smoke at home, fifth example. My parents don't have to travel. I don't need your support, seventh example. You are obliged to listen carefully, eighth example. So here we find different meanings of the sentences. So this is for the 8th example. The 9th example or sentence, you are not obliged to accept the work offer. The 10th, you are obliged not to follow my instructions. You should have confidence on your capacities. I advise you to travel for better opportunities. You ought to respect your friends. And the last example or the last sentence, I gave you permission to leave now. So this is for the examples. So I try to do the work, then you check the keys with me. First sentence, you must arrive on time to the meeting. This sentence expresses obligation. So must expresses obligation. Either you do it or you will be punished. You have to work hard to succeed. Have to here also expresses obligation. But there are other situations where it expresses necessity. But here it expresses obligation like must. You need to eat because you have medicines to take. Here it's necessity. It's necessary to eat to take your medicines, because if you take your medicines without eating, you will be sick also. You have to drink water. Here have to expresses necessity too. It's like need to. Okay? So have two functions. Either it expresses obligation or necessity. You must not or you mustn't smoke at home. Here it's prohibition. So if you smoke at home, you will be punished. So you don't do the action. Don't smoke at home. You must not smoke at home. Prohibition. My parents don't have to travel. Here it's absence of obligation. Don't have to travel. Okay? So absence of obligation. So they are not obliged to travel. I don't need your support. Absence of obligation too. You are obliged to listen carefully. Here are obliged to expresses obligation. It's like must. You are not obliged to accept the work offer. It's absence of obligation, as if you say you don't have to or you needn't or you don't need to. The same meaning. So you are not obliged to accept the work offer. Absence of obligation. The 10th example here, it's necessary to make the difference between the 9th and the 10th. The 9th, the negative not is coming between the auxiliary are and the past participle obliged. But for 10th, the negation comes after the past participle of the verb. So you are obliged not to follow my instructions. Here it expresses prohibition. So when you have the negation after the past participle of the verb, it expresses prohibition. When you have the negation between the auxiliary and the past participle, it expresses absence of obligation. So you are obliged not to follow my instructions expresses prohibition. You should have confidence on your capacities. Here should expresses advice or piece of advice. 12, I advise you to travel for better opportunities. Also, it expresses advice because we use the verb advise. You ought to respect your friends. It's also advice. So here we have 3 sentences expressing advice. The last example, I gave you my permission to leave now. Here it's permission. I allow you to leave now. So this is for what the models and these expressions express. As a reminder, must, are obliged, have to express obligation. Then have to, need to express necessity. So when you say you have to and we say you need to, here we express necessity. I hope it's clear for you. Okay, so they gave you sentence, either we must, you replace it are obliged, or we have to, or vice versa. Don't have to, don't need to, needn't, we can say needn't, are not obliged to express absence of obligation. So all these is expressing absence of obligation. Either you use don't have to, or don't need to, or needn't, or are not obliged. Mustn't, are obliged not, express prohibition. Should, ought to, advise, express advice or piece of advice. To permit, gave, or permission, or to allow. Okay, so task to complete sentence B so that it means as A, as sentence A. So this is in general the form of the question on the baccalaureate exams. First, my brother is obliged to leave home and leave alone. So to leave home and leave alone. My brother, what do we say? It's necessary to water the plants every morning. So they are not obliged to join us in our adventure. I advise you to calm down and resolve your problems. So how do we rewrite A to make it as to rewrite B to make it as A sounds? Clear? So we use one of the previous expressions. That's equivalent, that has equivalent meaning or approximately equivalent meaning to the A. Fifth, you are obliged not to break the rules of the game. I gave you the permission to go out with your friends today. You ought to avoid drinking a lot of coffee. So you try to do the tasks first, then you check for the keys on this video because I gave you the keys. So for the keys, here they are. My brother must leave home and leave alone. You have to or need to water the plants every morning. They don't need to or needn't or don't have to join us in our adventure. You should or you ought to calm down and resolve your problems. You must not, mustn't, break the rules of the game. Mustn't is the shortened form of must not. I allow you to go out with your friends today. So this is for these sentences. So you replace the expression with the equivalent one, either to express obligation, prohibition, permission, advice, or absence of obligation. The last example, you should avoid drinking a lot of coffee. So that's all for this video. I hope you understand the function of these models and expressions, so it will make it easy for you to answer on the baccalaureate exam. Thanks for watching. If you have any comment, leave it down. Thank you.